Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The WBC has delivered a crushing blow to Luis Ortiz, cancelling the sanctioning of his fight with Deontay Wilder over his alleged use of performance-enhancing drugs. So in his place, the WBC has ordered Bermane Stiverne, who is the mandatory challenger in the WBC, to face Wilder on November 4th. So there's a lot of threads to this thing to cover off and a number of questions. Chiefly, has Ortiz been dealt with fairly? Is Wilder-Stiverne a credible fight? What happens to Dominic Breazeale and also Dillian Whyte now? And how will this change of circumstances / fighters affect the broadcast deal and also anyone who's already purchased tickets for a fight that's no longer happening? The WBC is currently holding its annual meeting in Baku in Azerbaijan. As part of that event, it has been considering the situation where Luis Ortiz has failed a VADA test as part of the WBC Clean Boxing program. WBC President Mauricio Sulaiman has confirmed what many of us were expecting. The WBC will not sanction a Wilder-Ortiz fight now. In a short statement, Mauricio Sulaiman says, the WBC has concluded the process according to its clean boxing program protocol in the adverse finding of Luis Ortiz. An official ruling has been sent to the corresponding parties. The WBC has withdrawn its sanction of the Deontay Wilder vs Luis Ortiz fight, and Wilder will fight his next mandatory fight against Bermane Stiverne. Specific details will be released at a later date. An abbreviated version of that was also tweeted by Sulaiman. So there we have it. Ortiz out, Stiverne in. So all the pleading by Team Ortiz that the failed test was down to blood pressure medicine, well, that's counted for naught. Wheeling out experts to try to legitimize the medication he's been taking without telling VADA has had obviously no impact. An appeal, you would think, would seemingly be a fruitless endeavour as well. But I'm not really surprised by what's happened. The way the WBC president announced the failed test by dropping it in a tweet in the middle of the night with no supporting information, it set the narrative that Luis Ortiz was guilty from the outset. And he did that before any investigation had even begun. We have now since been told that Team Ortiz has failed to lodge the appropriate paperwork over blood pressure medication. But the full facts have yet to come out. But let's face it, they probably never will. We'll never get the full story on this. If Team Ortiz did lapse so badly on the paperwork requirements, then actually that is their fault, and they now have to deal with the consequences. They have given the WBC the opportunity to do what it has done. They can only blame themselves. Luis Ortiz's guilt or otherwise, it's really almost immaterial now. And from what's being said, he's hung himself on a technicality. So a sanction of some sort beyond losing this fight, well, it's probably also highly possible. Team Ortiz, well, it could perhaps take the legal route, appeal this to the courts, but no one really wins when cases like this end up in court. But in fairness to Ortiz, the WBC did show its hand early on in this one by the way Mauricio Sulaiman played this whole thing out in public before any of the facts were established. So, and I did kind of go on about this in some of the earlier videos that I did. The deck, seemingly, it was always stacked against Ortiz, rightly or wrongly. So now we're left with the prospect of a Deontay Wilder vs Bermane Stiverne rematch. Oh God, just saying it just makes me feel a little bit sick. So this is a fight no one wanted again, possibly except Bermane Stiverne. This was a fight Wilder dodged all year because he had no interest in fighting his own leftovers that he'd so handily dealt to the first time around. The TV networks reportedly had zero interest in broadcasting this fight, and that was part of the problem why it couldn't get made. And we were all relieved when Stiverne finally, after months, agreed to take a step-aside fee to allow Wilder to face Ortiz. So we go from a blockbuster fight for Wilder to another pedestrian fight. Massively, massively, massively disappointing. let's face it, Wilder is the innocent party in this equation. Yet he will cop a huge amount of flack for padding out his record even further, for fighting a B-level or maybe even C-level fighter here. Stiverne, what, he's 39 and actually he's not that good. It's almost like the WBC is almost trying to hold Wilder back in some way. Remember, it was the one that shockingly installed Stiverne as the mandatory in the first place. And that came after one fight in over 2 years. And that in that one fight, he got knocked down and he came off the canvas to win. But many of us say he was pretty lucky to win. And that was a fight against Derek Rossi. There are no doubt some who will ratchet up the cries of bum squad and accuse the WBC of protecting Wilder. I'm not sure that's completely fair to Wilder, as it appears on the surface of this whole situation that it's been brought about by Luis Ortiz and his actions or inaction on paperwork. But let's be real, Wilder needed this fight. He's 38 fights deep and he's almost 10 years into his career, and the best name on his record is Stiverne. Another Stiverne notch does nothing for him. His credibility is low with many fans, who have accused him of cherry-picking average opponents over top names in the past couple of years. The Wilder defence, and he wheeled this out the other day, is that he has fought who's been put in front of him. My problem with that is, aside from the unfortunate situation with the Alexander Povetkin fight being cancelled, my problem is his people have matched him with average opponents who he was heavily favoured to beat, and then he beat them. There are some top names that have been floating around in the past couple of years that he could have fought. He could have actually fought Ortiz earlier. He could have fought Pulev, Klitschko, David Haye, Tyson Fury. And even more recently, say earlier this year, he could have gone for someone like a Dillian Whyte. There was a huge offer there. I mean, Whyte isn't quite at the top of the division at the moment, but he's on the margins. And, $4.5 million plus TV money to fight him, you would think Wilder would be jumping at that. Even one top name on Deontay Wilder's record, it would have relieved the pressure on his reputation and his standing with fans. I'm always amazed when Deontay Wilder cries foul about not getting support and respect from American boxing fans. Trust me, that would change if he fought a good opponent. That's the shame of this whole Ortiz mess. It robs Wilder of the chance to legitimize his record in the eyes of fans. But one thing I will say is Deontay Wilder, he's got to be very careful right now in the wake of this whole Ortiz thing about gassing himself up too much. I mean, he's been saying all sorts of craziness, saying things like he's now the most feared heavyweight since Mike Tyson. I mean, that's just out of control. It makes fans think that he's taken too many shots to the head. There's been a number of other posts in recent days which have been similarly bizarre. So next thing to remember is Wilder is not the only one to lose out here. Dominic Breazeale, he's collateral also. He is now without a fight given Stiverne has been elevated to the title fight. And BoxingScene.com is reporting that Lou DiBella will not hunt for a new opponent. And that means he's without a fight, so he's not on the card. No Ortiz mega fight now, and no decent undercard fight featuring Breazeale. So this November 4th event is starting to look really average. It's starting to look like that event that we didn't want to see a number of months ago. And it raises a whole bunch of questions for me that I'm sure will be answered in the coming days. But will Showtime, the broadcaster, will it be renegotiating the agreement in place? Or will it pull it all together? I can't imagine if there was zero interest in a Stiverne fight a few months ago, how that would have changed. But maybe they've invested too much now, promotional work, advertising, all sorts. Maybe they're just too deep into it now. I mean, there is a saying that any publicity is good publicity. But I would contend that given the fight is a month away, I'm not so sure that it flows through to helping put bums on seats at the Barclays. And I don't think it really helps, Stiverne Wilder helps people tune in. Ortiz Wilder, sure. Stiverne Wilder, not so much. And just on bums on seats, will the event still be held at the Barclays? And if so, will those who've already purchased tickets be offered a refund? Because this is a completely different event now, and I'd be asking for my money back if I'd paid for an Ortiz fight, but then was left with a Stiverne fight. It will be interesting to see how they play this one and how it all plays out, because I'm sure there will be many unhappy fans who won't want to pay over the odds for this fight, especially given a decent undercard fight has also been chopped. Brazil is gone. How much of a haircut purse-wise will Deontay Wilder take? I'm sure his purse was going to be significant for fighting Ortiz. Fighting Stiverne, it's probably going to be chopped in half, if not far more. I'd guess the drop will be significant. I doubt he really clears $1 million for this one. But also, what's going to happen to Dominic Breazeale? He's been training for weeks for an opponent, Stiverne, who he was gunning for, and now he's left without a fight. I guess a neat solution would be for Breazeale to fight Dillian Whyte, who has been trying to secure a good fight for October 28th on the Joshua Pulev undercard. He's been trying to secure any good fight in recent months without success. Even in the hours before the WBC announcement, Whyte was haranguing Wilder on Twitter, see on screen, to pick him to fight if Ortiz was canned. Sadly, it wasn't in Wilder's control, and he couldn't choose. It wasn't his choice to make. It was up to the WBC, who've ordered Stiverne. And you'll also see on screen that's been running in the background as well. Dillian Whyte has been undergoing some sort of cupping treatment as part of whatever training he's doing. I couldn't actually resist, and we're going off topic here, but I couldn't actually resist putting this comparison together. What do you think? Is it time for a new nickname for Dillian Whyte? If so, what would it be? I thought maybe the Steg would be appropriate. What do you think? Anyway, this whole situation, it's less than ideal. Actually, it's pretty frankly crappy. And the fans, we are the ones who've lost out. And if I was a ticket holder, I would definitely be wanting my money back. I wouldn't want to go pay as much as I would have paid for an Ortiz fight for a Stiverne fight. I guess we have the Joshua Pulev fight to look forward to later this month. That will be a decentish fight. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, Wilder Ortiz, it's an opportunity missed. I mean, Luis Ortiz, he's got, it's on him and his team for what's happened. It's just the reality of it. Okay, what do you make of this whole situation? What are your thoughts? Drop a comment loud and often. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.